Really pleased today to be joined by Pericles Rellas, money mindset master and expert. Great to have you here.
Matt, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Really looking forward to the conversation. So, money, is that something we're allowed to talk about?
Well, if you grew up in the same household I grew up in, it was taboo. We did not talk about money. We did not ask about money. It was off subject, and it impacts a lot of us for the rest of our lives. It kind of creates that foundation, that trajectory around money. And I'm really committed to opening that up for people so that they can ask the questions that they need to ask and start to create the kind of wealth and prosperity that they're looking for.
No, that's awesome, and it's so true. The culture, over here as well, still is very much money is not something you talk about. And I know people in workplaces even where they get called in and officially told, do not talk about salary, do not talk about money. That's not something you should discuss or be aware of. So it's like it's this big secret thing. And how are you supposed to do something which is pretty foundational to how you live your life, right? How are you supposed to manage that if you can't talk about it?
Exactly. And in fact, it's something we all interact with all the time, every day. It's unavoidable. And yet we never really teach people about money. We don't have to necessarily go telling people how much we make, but asking questions about what we don't understand. It's one of the few things that we approach that's so, as you said, integral to our lives, that we have no training in, no mandatory training. You have to go take lessons before you can take your driver's test, and you have to go
Yeah.
pass a test before you can drive a car. Same thing for an airplane, for a lot of things. And yet for money, something that's so important in our lives, we have absolutely no foundational training whatsoever. So it is important that people start to look at, well, where am I on the education level or the spectrum of understanding money? And what do I need to do to educate myself so I can first have that understanding, and two, start to create a mindset around money that allows me to build the kind of life that I want with money?
Yeah, no, that's so important. And yeah, I'd love to get into the detail of, how you work with your coaching clients, what that looks like, what your process, your framework looks like. But, to take a step back first, what led you to this position in the first place? How did you kind of get into doing this?
Well, when I first started working with clients 30 years ago as a coach, my commitment was really to help them grow and expand their business. Whether
Yeah.
they owned a business or whether they just had a job somewhere, they were really interested in making more money and kind of creating the lifestyle that they wanted. And I noticed very early on this pattern with all of my clients across the board. They would make more money, but at the end of the month, they were still in the same place they were before I started working with them. So if they were somebody that was always just treading water or underwater, even if they made substantially more, they were still just treading water or underwater. If they were somebody that was stressed and worried and had anxiety around money, even if they were making a lot more money, they still had that stress and anxiety. And I noticed this pattern and said, there's got to be something going on here. And for the next 2 years, I really started to study it. And I started to look at it with my clients. I engaged with them on this conversation. And look what's happening. I want to start to look at this. And I explored it. And I discovered two things in those 2 years. One is that we all have a foundation, or what I call a money mindset. I like to call it your financial thermostat. People can relate to a thermostat much more easily. So we've got this financial thermostat, and it regulates how much money we can earn, how much money we can keep, as well as our thoughts, feelings, and emotions around money. And then the second thing I discovered is what's now my education, called Reset Your Financial Thermostat, where people can actually reset their thermostat so that they can earn more money, they can keep more money, and they can start to have the experience of joy, happiness, fulfillment, and satisfaction around money. And that's what I've been
Mm.
doing for the last 20 years.
No, fascinating. Really, really interesting. And I know lots of entrepreneurs as well that you're right about that whole fear piece. They might be making more money and earning more money through the different offers, different services they provide, no matter what that looks like, but they still have that constant fear that they had before and don't know what they should be doing with it, how they should be thinking about it, but they still feel like they're in that same position that they were before, even though the reality is probably quite different. But you see the habits, the actions they take are the same. You're right; they kind of remain unchanged, don't they?
They do. And in fact, when they start to notice that, wow, I've been working harder and I'm still in the same place making more money, what that triggers is, well, I just have to work even harder and I have to
Yeah.
make even more money. And what I found in the work that I've done is that it's exponential in certain regards. So, for example, if you're somebody who makes $5,000 a month, but you spend six, that means you're $1,000 or £1,000, wherever you are, €1,000 in the hole every single month. And
Yeah.
your thought process is, well, all I need to do is make 10 and I'll be fine. Well, it's not going to be, I'm going to earn 10 and I'm just going to be under by 1,000 or 2,000. You're going to earn 10 and you're going to be under by 15. You're going to
Yeah. Yeah.
spend 15. And if you make 20, you're going to spend 40 because that financial thermostat is what's regulating your relationship to money. So it's not about making more. It's not about working harder. It's about understanding your financial thermostat, altering it so that you can earn more money and actually keep more money at the same time.
That's interesting, and I think it's a different approach and kind of style advice to what you commonly hear. I see, you see the people posting online, right? Getting all the likes, the social engagement, and it's one of two camps, isn't it? It's, oh, do you realize how much your daily Starbucks habit is costing you? Just cut this out. Reduce your cable TV subscription by this much, like chipping away at the pennies. Or it's the people saying that doesn't matter. You shouldn't focus on the small things. You need to earn more. This is how you earn more. But what you're describing is actually fundamentally changing the foundations behind all of that, aren't you?
Absolutely. So we have two camps that you just described. The first one is let's contract, let's get smaller, let's cut, let's cut, let's cut. And that creates an energetic dynamic of getting smaller, getting smaller, getting smaller. And if you notice, most people who go into that mode, it doesn't work. They just end up getting more and more frustrated, more and more annoyed because they have less. They keep cutting, they keep cutting, they keep cutting, but then they end up making less and less and less. So
Yeah.
that doesn't work. And the second one is, well, let's just ignore all of that. Let's just work on making more money, making more money, making more money. But if you don't have a mindset to manage that kind of money, you're going to disappear that money so fast. And then you're creating this vacuum or wake that actually sucks even more money away from you. And that's why you look at more than 70% of all lotto winners go broke within the first 5 years. Here in the
Wow.
United States, we have professional athletes who've made tens of millions of dollars in the course of their life, completely bankrupt and owing money after they've retired. How does that happen? That's their financial thermostat. Their money mindset is not designed to handle that kind of money. So we need to look at the foundations of it. How do you relate to money? What is your financial thermostat setting and how can we reset it? And that's what I do with my clients.
No, that's awesome. That sounds like it's more than just where should I invest any money I've got? How should I save money? It sounds like it's more than that. So, what does it look like then to even determine where your financial thermostat is in the first place?
The as I said, the financial thermostat determines how much money we can earn and how much money we can keep, as well as our thoughts, feelings, and emotions around money. So the fastest way to determine your financial thermostat setting is to look at, well, how much money am I able to earn? If you're at a glass ceiling and you can't break beyond that, and you've been trying, you've been working really hard, that's your financial thermostat setting, whatever that number is. If you're able to earn lots of money, but you notice you're not able to hold on to it, it just disappears, kind of like water on a dry ground, it just vanishes,
Yeah.
then that's your financial thermostat setting. If you're able to earn a lot, you're able to keep a lot, but you still have stress, you have anxiety, or you're never satisfied, you're never fulfilled, you have no sense of enough in your life, then that's your financial thermostat setting. So it's really easy to look around at how things are and say, wow, this is what my financial thermostat setting is. That's the first thing. It's kind of like admitting you've got a problem.
Yeah.
That's the first step. It's like, wow, I'm not able to earn what I want to earn, and it's been this way for a long time. Then I've got an issue with where my financial thermostat setting is. Then the next step is to start to understand three things. One, where your money comes from. Most people never even look at that or consider it. Number
Yeah.
two, where your money goes. And then the third is your relationship to money. So if I can just take a moment, I'll break all three of those down very quickly. So one, where our money comes from. Well, we usually we have a job or we've got a business. And in most cases, not all, but in or I'll say many cases, people don't like their job or they don't like their boss or they don't like some element or aspect of their job.
Yeah.
So they end up resenting it, they end up upset or annoyed about it. We cannot become that which we resent. So if we look at
Mm.
our boss and we resent them, or we look at our job and we resent it, you're instantly creating a block in the flow of money coming to you. That is not a good place to be standing when you're trying to create wealth in your life. If you're somebody who looks at people who are wealthy and you say, oh, I never want to be like them, you've just eliminated your possibility of becoming wealthy. Now, some people will say, well, I don't want to be that wealthy. The universe doesn't distinguish between that wealthy or this wealthy. If you have
Yeah.
X number of dollars and I give you an extra penny, you are now wealthier in the eyes of the universe than you were 2 seconds ago. That means you resent the wealthy. You can't become that which you resent. So we've got to really start to look at what are those conversations we have that are negative about the money that comes to us. Most people never even look at their job, look at their paycheck and think, thank you, say thank you. I'm so
Mm.
grateful that I get this paycheck every single week or every month or whenever they get paid. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to earn this money so that I can have a home or a place to live or a car, all the things that I want in my life. That's another area that you want to start to look at. Now, money flowing away from us. That's if you don't like to pay your bills on time, you've got the money, but you just want to hold on to that money. Or you're one of those people that like, you know what? I'll pay them when I'm good and ready to pay them. They don't need the money right now, or I don't want to pay them. Those are blocks in the flow of money going away from us. And again, those impact how much money we can earn and how much money we can keep. Now, let me tell you why, because this is really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Money is a currency. And as a currency, it flows just like a current. We know what a current is. It could be electricity, it could be water, it could be wind, but it flows in a very distinct way. It flows in a circle. We intersect that circle. So it flows to us, through us, and away from us, and then back around to us, through us, and away from us with a reservoir on the side that we get to keep. Now, what I was saying earlier about blocks in the flow of money coming to us, because it flows in a circle, those blocks impact money going away from us. We have blocks in the flow of money going away from us, impact money flowing to us. And all of that impacts that reservoir on the side that we get to keep. So we want to start looking at, where am I blocking the flow of money in my life? How is that impacting my ability to earn money and to keep money? And start clearing those blocks. And the first step to that is just noticing that you have them. And then the next is intentionally not having those conversations anymore. We can't help what pops into our head. Look,
Yeah.
our minds are crazy things. My thoughts are crazy sometimes. But what thoughts are you going to focus on? What thoughts are you going to feed? And then what actions are you going to take based on those thoughts? Those are the things that are really important. And then the last is, how do we relate to money? What's our relationship to money? Do you appreciate money? Do you acknowledge money? I like to equate it to having a significant other. You know, for those of you or for those of us who are married or in a relationship, if you treat your significant other like, well, I demand that you be here when I want you. I expect you to be here every time I need you. I'm going to use you whenever I need, but I'm never going to appreciate it or appreciate the what you provide in my life. That person's not going to hang around very long. And the
Yeah.
same is true for money. We expect it to be there. We demand that it's there. We want more of it, and yet we never appreciate it. We never say thank you. We never acknowledge what it can provide in our lives. And so you start to put all those things together, and you can have a whole new financial thermostat and start to build and create the kind of wealth and prosperity that you want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to kind of unpack a couple of those. I think firstly on that resentment piece you mentioned, you're so right. Like I've lost, I couldn't count how many times people, they hate their boss, like you say, but then they would also be the ones that would somehow expect to be promoted. Well, why would you be promoted into something you actively kind of hate and despise? And same with the media. I think you look at films, TV, and all of these things that you see. Oh, the wealthy, the big boss is almost portrayed as the enemy in many ways. And I know my parents will, certainly, I can recall conversations say, oh, it's just big business owners doing this, being greedy, taking all the money, when they don't understand the mechanics of, all the people that they're actually supporting and responsible for financially.
Yeah. And it's the nuanced conversations that we're having around that are so important, because we never look at it as how it impacts us. We look at it, well, I want to vilify them and they're horrible and
Mm.
they're bad, or money's the root of all evil. Money is the reason that they're doing what they do. No, it's not. Money's just money. It's just
Yep.
paper. It's just coins. It has nothing inherent about it other than our ability to purchase goods and services. That's all it is. Who we are gets amplified when we get that money. And if we don't manage who we are, the more money we get, the more who we are gets amplified. So if we're not nice people at our core, the more money we get, the more not nice we're going to be. If we're greedy, the more money we get, the more greedy we're going to be. If we're reckless, the more money we get, the more reckless we're going to be. That's that financial thermostat we're talking about. So really look at those conversations, stop vilifying and blaming others, and start looking at ourselves. Wow, you know what? I used to hate my boss, but I now have them in a new light. I've created my relationship with them in a new context, and
Yeah.
I appreciate them, and I appreciate what they provide for me every month or every week whenever you get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you were saying as well about that flow of money. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, lots of other coaches, and their attitude to money, affects how they deal with their clients. Right? Like how can they expect their clients to engage with them, invest in them, if they're not prepared to do the same thing, right? And they think those two things are separate, but from a mindset point of view, they've got to be linked, haven't they?
Yes, they are. And in fact, there's two things that come up for me that are so important in what you're saying is, one, a lot of people think, well, if I make a lot of money, I'm just going to have a financial advisor take care of it. That is
Yep.
the fastest way to get separated from your money. Now, I'm not disparaging financial advisors. There are some really great financial advisors out there. But why would you hand over the most important job in your life, other than your actual job, to someone else without at least having the basic understandings of what it is they're going to do with your money? You've just worked 40 hours and you've earned this money, and now you're going to hand it over to somebody you know nothing about. You know nothing about what they're going to do. That would be like giving your baby to a stranger on the street and saying, "Would you watch my kid for a few hours? I need to go do something." We would never do that, but we
Yeah. Yeah.
don't relate to money the same way. So understanding, you don't have to be a financial advisor, but have the basic understanding of what it is they're going to do and ask the important questions so that you know what they're going to be doing with your money. What are the risks? What are the liabilities? What are the rewards? And be a part of making that decision rather than handing it over to something. I mean, we see this all the time where somebody says, well, I don't know what happened. My financial advisor just lost all my money. Well,
Yep.
whose fault is that? Well, they just took advantage of an opportunity they saw because you didn't have your finger on the pulse. And the second thing I want to say that is, we live in a world where people want to look wealthy rather than be wealthy. They want to look the part so much more than they want to actually have the wealth. And so when you
Yeah.
see people in social media and they're in these jets and they're talking about making all this money, these folks don't have money. These folks have an image of having money. What is it you want in your life? Do you want to have the look of money? You want people to think you're wealthy, or do you actually want to have the wealth? Whichever choice is fine, just make the choice. If you just want to have the look, great, go live that life. I have no judgment about that. But if you want to actually have the wealth, then make the choices that are consistent with actually having that wealth.
Yeah. And do you think, part of that comes down to them not truly believing almost what is possible? Like almost like it's not possible to live in a way that isn't that kind of week to week or month to month, or the opportunity, even if it's there at a given moment in time, it's not likely to last forever or for a long time or whatever
Mm.
it may be.
Yeah, I think there are two ways to approach this. One is, most people don't relate to money in such a way that I have to do the work in order to understand my relationship to money, understand how money works. And the second is, we live in a world where we just think everything, if I could just make more money, everything will just work out,
Yeah.
right? But the reality is that's not the way it is. People who are truly successful, and when I say successful, there are two camps here. There's successful in that they've made a lot of money. We can see a lot of people who've made a lot of money. Are they truly happy? Are they contributing to the world? Or are they constantly reaching for more? Whatever that may look like. Look, I've worked with people who are billionaires, literally on the list, and they're miserable. They're
Yeah.
constantly chasing after more money, which is an insane conversation when you think about the amount of money that they have. But they're chasing more money, and it's never enough, and they're never satisfied. They can fly on the best airline in the private suites or a private jet. There's always something wrong. There's
Yeah.
always something to complain about. So they don't have the experience of being joyful and fulfilled in their life. They're constantly chasing after something else. That's what I want to avoid for my clients if that's what they're interested in. Again, I have no judgment about that. That's the life you want to live, go for it. But if that's not the life that you want to live, start to make different choices. And I think
Mm.
that's where most people fail is they don't think about how their relationship to money impacts their ability to earn it. So the second thing that you said was, well, I start to make more money, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm making more money. Well, what's going on in your head? Is it like you said, that negative thought like, well, this isn't going to last forever. When's the second shoe going to drop? When are they going to find out you're a fraud? When are they going to find out you really don't deserve this? All of those nutty conversations that we have no control over. They run the show if we're not aware of them and not starting to create and generate conversations that
Mm.
empower us on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it, especially for any, business owner as well, it can be like so confusing what money really means, what, a lot of money, a little money, what you should charge, what you shouldn't charge means, right? Because it doesn't matter what you set that price point at. It could be any number. You just make up any number, right? And there'll be someone that tells you it's too cheap. There'll be someone that tells you it's too expensive. There'll be someone that tells you it's just right, right? So it's just, there's this whole kind of confusion element over,
Right.
well, what does opportunity look like? What does good value? What does a fair price look like before you even get the money in the first place, and before you even start to kind of work out how to manage it.
Yeah. And for business owners or anyone who's thinking about owning a business, even if you don't own a business and you work in a job, 9 to 5 job or whatever that looks like, it's not just about the money. It's, are you being fairly compensated for what you're providing? Are you making a difference in the work that you do? This impacts primarily, not exclusively, but primarily business owners who really want to do something that inspires them. Are
Yep.
you in it just for the money? Because that will end up being bankrupt at some point. You may make lots of money, but you won't find the joy and satisfaction that you're looking for. But what is it you want to accomplish beyond making more money? Do you really want to contribute? Great. Then is each and every, or are all of your clients experiencing the difference that you say they're going to get in their lives every time you work with them? And if they are, awesome. Keep doing more of that. And then look at engage all the time. Is the compensation, is this reciprocity fair and equitable for everyone, not just for you,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
for them as well? Are you able to provide for your clients the way you want to? And then all the people that work for you, are you taking care of them as well? Because it isn't just about the clients. You have a team that you've brought on board. They're feeding their families, they're creating their own wealth and prosperity. Are you being fair with them? So there is a lot to look at so that you can be responsible for creating the kind of balance in your life, in your business that you're looking for. And starting with your own money mindset, your own financial thermostat is mission critical. I've seen clients they had a $250,000 month and it disappears into a black hole of
Wow.
just mindset. It's like
Yeah.
there's no way there's enough money to fill that hole. It will just consistently disappear every single month.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned the clients that you work with. Do you have any examples you can give people just to give them a bit of kind of concrete context as to what difference actually addressing that mindset head on can make to them?
Sure. I one of my favorites is I had a client who had a PhD in history and he was a minister and he works in the realm of American history and how it intertwined with religion. And so he spent his whole life creating this expertise and building his education, and just he was amazing. And
Yeah.
yet he had never been paid a single penny to talk about his area of expertise. And when we first started working together, he's like, Pericles, I just want you to know, from when I was a kid, I was always told your time is not valuable. You cannot charge for your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've got this mindset around money where I'm not going to be able to charge. And so we started to work together. By the time we finished working together, he does not open his mouth without getting paid $1,500 an hour. That is a
Wow.
huge breakthrough for him. And he gets that on a regular basis. He actually has people reaching out to him saying, we want you to speak at our event. We want you to speak at our whatever it is. And he's now booked solid. He also got a job on a cruise line where all he does all day long is talk to people about his area of expertise and get paid for it and get on a free cruise. So he's living the life of his dreams that he never thought was possible because of that mindset that came from early childhood.
Yeah, it's funny how those conversations can have such a dramatic impact, and you've got to do something to break that cycle, haven't you? To pull yourself out of that way of thinking.
Yes, it's the same for anything. We all grow up in the environments that we grow up in, whether it's our parents or whether it's aunts or uncles, close family members, friends, or other people that influence us. They can have a tremendous impact on our mindset at a very young age. For me, around money, it was I remember it like it was yesterday when I was a kid. I'm going to date myself here. We were watching some show. I can't remember what it was. About the wealthy and their decadent lifestyles and how they lose everything. And I
Yeah.
remember at the end of this show, my mom said very nonchalantly, she didn't have an agenda. She just in passing said, I never want to have that kind of money. You'll lose your whole family. And in that
Mm.
moment, that little boy subconsciously decided you can never have that much money. You don't want to lose your family. And
Yeah. Yeah.
unbeknownst to me, that ran the show for years before I was able to uncover that and then shift it. And for all of us, it's the same way. The first step, as I said earlier, is you've got to acknowledge that you've got conversations going on that are inconsistent with who you want to be and what you want to have in your life. There's no shame in that. That's that first step for a breakthrough. And then once you get to that place, then you'll start to notice, whoa, all the other conversations. And then you can start to create new conversations, because just how we created the old conversation, whether subconsciously or not, we can actively create new conversations that allow us to live the life that we want to live.
Sure. No, I can see how that is incredibly liberating and empowering, and I can also see how, in order to do that in the first place, you need an outside perspective. And I don't intend this to be kind of a pitch type thing, but for people to understand like how a third party, how coaching someone through that can be, why it's essential and how it can help them. Like how do you work with clients? Like what do you find works well to help people break out of that mindset in your coaching practice?
The first thing is, I only work with people who are really interested in doing the work that I do. There's,
Yeah.
like anything, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can't force someone to do something they're just not interested in doing. And again, I have no judgment. If you don't want to work with someone, great, don't work with someone. Do you, right? But
Yeah.
if you're in that place, the first thing you want to know is there are going to be challenges along the way, because we only expand through challenge. We only expand when it's hard. It's easy for us to sit on the couch and eat bonbons and watch TV, right? That's easy. That's
Yeah.
what we all want to do in this, survival brain of ours. But for when we like going to the gym, the only way to get muscles is to feel the pain of pressing weight you've never pressed before. But on the other side of that pain or discomfort is the breakthrough. And so that's the first thing I get clear with my clients is, look, this is going to be challenging. And for some people, it's more challenging for others than
Yeah.
others. All you need to know is whatever challenge you're going through is fine. There is nothing wrong with it. It is exactly where you need to be. And then the next thing is, making sure that my clients are clear. There is no one right answer. I don't have the answer. I have an answer that works for people. I modify that answer so that it works for each individual person. So if you are looking for a coach, you want to ask questions that are important to you because
Yep.
you're going to be working with this person in a very intimate way and putting your trust with them. So you want to make sure that it's somebody you trust. And you also want to make sure that it's somebody who's malleable. That isn't just, well, you do it my way or you don't do it at all. Look, I've got a guideline. I've got an education that works, but I modify it so that it works for each individual person. Everyone has a different approach. And a great coach can see what's going to work best for you, what approach is going to work best for you, so that you can take the steps that you need to take to go down the path you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think anyone looking for a coach, advisor, mentor, I've had, all kinds of coaches for different areas of business and life. And I think the thing for me that's been really, really useful is having clarity on the outcome that I'm looking for, and then finding someone that specializes in whatever that outcome is, but then recognizing that they should have a general process that they take people through. But they, as you say, there should also be flexibility. You don't want someone that's making it up as they go along every time, right? You want there to be some kind of proven system, framework, methodology that they deploy, but you want to have trust that they can, as you say, be malleable and adapt that to reflect the individuality of the people that they're working with, right?
Yes, and a time frame in which you can accomplish those specific goals. And
Yeah.
another really important thing to look at is a coach should be there to elevate you, not to keep you in a place where you need a coach.
Mm.
Your coach wants you, a good coach, a great coach, wants you to exceed where what they've accomplished, wants you to be far better than you ever thought you could be so that you no longer rely on the coach. And I know that doesn't sound self-serving, and it isn't, right? You want, as a coach, to see your client succeed and someday say, you know what? I love working with you. You've been awesome, but I don't need you anymore. Like, I'm ready to go out on my own, or I love having you here. Let's do touch bases because I want to make sure I'm not starting to slide back, because we're either expanding or contracting. There's no stasis. There's no standing still. We're either
Yeah, yeah.
expanding or contracting. So make sure your coach is not there to keep you reliant on them, but to get you to a place where you can fly on your own. And if you want to keep working with them, great, keep working with them, but make sure you're working with them and expanding and expanding and expanding.
Yeah, no, I think this is super important, super interesting. And I think it speaks to the confidence in your own mindset that you are, comfortable and confident in saying that. And I don't think you would want to, anyone should work with a coach that isn't prepared to say what you just said, right? Because it speaks to that abundance mindset is, no, I'm going to help you. It's a journey we're going to take together. We're going to get you here. And then you don't need me anymore. And I'm okay with that because there are lots of other people that do need me, right? Which speaks to that abundance mindset, doesn't it?
Correct. And there's such joy and satisfaction in seeing someone fly off on their own, and actually succeed. I love that. That is such a joy for me. And my life is enriched out of every single conversation that I have. You want to make sure that your coach doesn't relate to you as, well, I'm way up here and you're way down here. No,
Mm.
I have interactions every single day in any area of my life. It doesn't make any difference. My life is enriched out of every single one of those interactions. I'm not better than anyone else. I have insights that other people may not have, just like they have insights that I don't have. And I love the reciprocity of that, so that they benefit and I benefit. We both leave each interaction better people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you don't want that coach that's almost dependent on you as much, if not more than you're dependent on them, right, for results.
Please don't leave me. I need your money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to be aware of all of those things. And look, the bottom line for anyone who's looking for a coach is you've got to feel comfortable with them. Trust your instincts. If you feel comfortable with them, you feel you can trust them, and you know that there's going to be a challenge along the way in the work that you're doing with them. That's totally fine. But ultimately, at the end of the day, do you feel comfortable and do you trust them? If you
Yeah.
do, take the leap. Look, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can find someone else. But at some point, you have to trust. And that is, for many people, the thresholds, that's the hardest thing to get beyond. I can
Mm.
never trust anyone. I've been told not to trust anyone. That will impede your ability to take that leap because ultimately you don't trust yourself. That's what I've discovered. Anything that we're
Mm.
afraid of is all about us. There's nothing else out there. Whatever it is you're afraid of, you can look to yourself to see the source of it. So when we don't trust, it's because others, it's because we don't trust ourselves. So look to see, do I need to just take the leap here? Sometimes it is a leap of faith. You've got
Yeah.
all the information you need, then just dive in. Or, nope, I'm going to find someone else. But at some point, you've got to take that leap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how you go about building that trust. And I know from my own experience, I remember kind of earlier days in business, you put things out there on the internet, on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or you're on an advert campaign, and you get random people on the internet commenting, "This is a scam.
Right.
Don't trust them. How can they possibly do this? Looks like an idiot." All these kind of random comments from people that don't know you, don't know your process, don't know whether you can help people that aren't in your target audience anyway, but just people that react kind of angrily to someone else trying to make a success of themselves. And, the first few times that happened, right, I was like, whoa, it was a massive shock, took a big step back. I was like, whoa, what are people going to think of me? What do I think of me? So, yeah, it kind of, yeah, it does kind of, you take that knock the first few times you get that. So how do you kind of protect yourself against that almost? And how do you actually build trust with clients?
Well, I think there are two things that you're addressing, and both are really important. The first one is for people who are active on social media, who are making a difference. They're building a business or they're reaching out to make a difference with people through social media. We're always going to have people that come back with negative comments. And as you
Mm.
said, they're people who don't know you. They've never met you. They've never worked with you. They know nothing about you other than what they're seeing on social media. And they start to attack. Don't take it personally because it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. And it's not a judgment. It's not like they're bad people. It's simply an observation that there's something about their own life that gets triggered by your out there trying to make a difference. And maybe it's that they're too afraid to do what they want to do, or they are so unhappy with their own life for whatever reason. We can have compassion for that, but never take it to heart because it literally has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. So we can have compassion and move on. And the
Yeah. Yeah.
second, I like when I'm looking to work with someone one-on-one, which is not as common nowadays because I work in a different format with groups. But if somebody's really interested in working with me one-on-one and they get to that place where I'm ready to meet with them, I want to just know I want them to talk. I want
Yep.
them to tell me what they're looking for. I want to hear their dreams and their aspirations. I want to hear their concerns. I want to hear their challenges. I want to hear all of that so that I can then speak to it and let them know what I'm hearing and how I would address it so that they can then make the decision for themselves. And one of the things I'm going to say is, I'm always going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to candy coat it. I'm going to have compassion. I'm going to have every conversation with love and a commitment to you getting the value that you want. But if you're doing something that isn't working, I'm going to say you're doing something that I see is not going to work for you. And
Yeah.
here's
Yeah.
why, and here's what I think you should do. And in the course of that conversation, they get a real sense of what it's going to be like working with me and how I like to approach things. And that conversation is different because each individual person is different. But by the end of that conversation, I'm clear if I want to work with them because it
Yep.
isn't just a one-sided conversation. And they're clear if they want to work with me. And if both of them are a yes, then we can take the next step forward. So make sure that you're not just filling out a form online and sending somebody some information and that's it and you're ready to work with them. You want to get on the phone with them or you want to get on Zoom or some platform where you can see them. They can see you and you can have an unscripted conversation and get a real feel for how they are in real
Mm.
time dealing with you and what it is you want to get out of your work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on many a call where the person I'm talking to, whether it's a coach, advisor, or a different program, whatever that is, where they say, "Oh, based on everything you've told me, I can tell you're a good fit." And you know that conversation hasn't really even scratched the surface. They've not gone to any depth. You know that they tell that to 99.9% of people they have a conversation with, right? Like, you're breathing, therefore you're a good fit, is the qualification
And
criteria,
your
right?
money's good. Your credit card clears.
Yeah,
You're a fit.
exactly. And I think that shallowness is something that really erodes trust. Because if you get that at the beginning of the conversation, then what's it going to be like once you start working with someone?
Right. And I think one of my favorite things is when we're always on our best behavior. When you have a first interaction, it's kind of like the first date. You're always on your best behavior. But I love it when somebody really lets their guard down and lets fly the thing that's been in their way of success all these years, whatever that may be. Sometimes it's a flash of anger. Sometimes it's resentment. Sometimes it's just challenging. All of those things. Those are the great things that you want to have happen, because then you really get to see who they are in that authentic way. And then they
Yeah.
get to see how I interact and deal with it in real time, rather than, oh, okay, I'm thinking about it, I'm working. No, what just happened? Let's talk about it. Is this something that you've noticed as a pattern with you? And suddenly, like, whoa, he's not reactivated. He's not charged. He's not plugged in. He's not mad. He's really addressing it, because it's not about me. It's all about them.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think sometimes, especially in those initial conversations, I see coaches can often be holding back because they're almost afraid of giving a little bit too much away almost at that initial conversation, and worried that the prospective client might feel that they've got what they came for or become overwhelmed by the depth of that conversation. But I think
Right.
you're right. I think there is a balance to be had, but I think most people don't go to the depths that they should do to demonstrate and build that trust effectively.
And I think if you have the self-confidence in your own work, in who you are, you're not going to be afraid to hold back in that moment. Look, I can have a conversation
Yeah,
with somebody for 30 minutes, and that's all it's going to take. We're going to talk for 30 minutes. We're not going on for hours and hours, because then that's somebody that's just trying to get free stuff.
yeah,
But we'll have a deep conversation in 30 minutes. And I'm not concerned at all about I want them to get value. I want them by the end of the call to see something they've never seen before, actually have a transformation in that conversation. Because in that moment, they're going to decide one of two things: I got what I wanted,
yep,
or this is the person to work with me. If there's someone who says, I got what I wanted, they're most likely not somebody I want to work with, because they're just looking for superficial wins. I'm looking for someone who's really committed to doing a deep dive, really
yeah, yeah.
committed to transforming things at a deep level, because that's where the gold really happens. That's where the sustainable transformation occurs. And that's why it's so important to have those deep dive conversations, even in 30 minutes.
Yeah, and like you say, that's if they're saying they got what they came for, they probably aren't the people you want to work with. And I think again that comes down to confidence and also that money mindset, right? Where we started, that abundance mindset that feeds into everything you do. And if you have that, then that feeds into the confidence, which means you're not afraid to turn people away that aren't a good fit.
Of course. And it's kind of like somebody who's just suddenly made a huge amount of money. They've done really, really well. They've made a huge amount of, okay, I'm out. I'm done. I got what I wanted. Well,
Yep.
you're going to disappear that money in about 3 months. I guarantee it, because you're now not willing to do the next level of work, which is, what are you going to do with that money? How are you going to leverage that money so that you get the best return on it? Or are you going to be like the person who goes into the house that's the power's out and just start pulling wires out of the wall, not knowing what you're doing, and you're going to get electrocuted? It's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same thing with money. People often say that, so, well, money's not like electricity. It can't kill you. Look at 2008. People lost everything. They lost their
Mm.
homes. They lost their jobs. They lost their life savings. They lost their families. Some people lost their lives. It is exactly the same conversation. We just don't treat it that way. We want to get educated around money. We want to understand it so that we can get the maximum benefit out of it. Just like a significant other. If you understand them, if you appreciate them, if you work with them in a way that brings them joy and happiness, they're going to do the same thing for you, and life's going to be great. Versus some other way that just isn't going to work.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like a large part of that is being open to the mindset that it isn't like all external factors, things out of your control, things that happen to you that determine that, no matter what the media tells you, about the economy or anything else, right? That actually the foundations of it are firmly under your control.
Yes. And that is the biggest thing that most people are challenged with.
Mm.
There are no external circumstances. It's all us. At the end of the day, what do we want money for? Joy, happiness, fulfillment. Well, what if we could have joy, happiness, and fulfillment long before we had all the money? Well, you've got the icing on the cake so that if we have a situation like the pandemic where everything shut down,
Yeah.
rather than it being a catastrophe and a disaster, both in terms of the health and well-being of our friends and families and ourselves, also around money. What if it was just around, we just need to focus on our health and well-being? I'm not worried about the money because I've got that all handled. I've got myself in a place where I know I can get through this with no problem. So now I can just focus on what I need to focus on, which is being healthy, keeping my friends and family healthy. That's a whole different place to stand. That's a whole different place to be. And that's where I train my clients so that they can have that sustainably throughout their lives. And they don't go into a place of, we're in a crisis, contract, contract, contract. No, we're
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
crisis. We're going to take the actions that we know we need to take to be responsible in the moment that we're in. That's a true place of power.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a very good place to be in. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's an important message that people need to hear. And obviously, for anyone that wants to find out more about the way that you work, the work that you do, we'll leave links, etc. But for the audience today, what if there's one thing you could leave them with? What would that be?
Never stop growing. Never underestimate your ability to expand your capacity to earn more money and to keep more money. So educate yourselves. We live in a world where we can get information at the click of a few keys. Use those resources to educate yourself. You don't need to become a financial expert, but get smarter every day than you are around money and watch how it starts to grow and show up in your life.
Amazing, great advice, Pericles. Thank you, so much for sharing that today. Thank you for a really interesting, enjoyable conversation. It's been a pleasure.
Matt, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Yeah, you too.